today, and whoa, and I didn't make any announcement for it, so I suppose no one was expecting it, but here I am, I guess, anyway. And well, what's the plan for today's lesson? Well, I guess I'm just going to go through the news and have a discussion about that. Hopefully, some interesting vocabulary will come up, and we can see in the chat if people have any questions or things that they want to ask me about. But basically, yeah, I'm just going to have a look through the latest headlines and have a little think about what we can say, what comments we can make on that. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is I'm on the BBC News homepage here, and the first thing that grabs my attention, a nice controversial one to start, is Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, has cemented his status with a historic resolution. So I think he's going to be president for life now, is the plan, right? And so that's an interesting situation that we have going on there. He's only the third leader in Chinese history to do this after Mao Zedong, which I don't think went very well, did it? and who was the other one? Deng Xiaoping, right? Okay. So we've got a fairly interesting story here, and I think, what does this mean? Does this mean that he's going to be president for life? What's going on here? I don't know. Does anybody know anything about this story? Can anybody add anything to it? I'll just show you. I'm just going to put in the chat what I'm looking at so that you can see anything that you want to comment on. I'm just going to put that in there. So anyone who's looking at the chat here can get involved and see what I'm looking at. And there you go. There you go. That's the article that I'm looking at here. So it says the Chinese Communist Party has passed a historical resolution cementing Xi Jinping's status in political history. The document, a summary of the party's 100-year history, addresses its key achievements and future directions. It is only the third of its kind since the founding of the party. The first was passed by Mao Zedong in 1945, and the second by Deng Xiaoping in 1981. It was passed on Thursday at the 6th plenary session of one of China's most important political meetings. As only the third Chinese leader to have issued such a resolution, the move aims to establish Mr. Xi as an equal to the party founder Mao and his successor Deng. Some observers see the resolution as Mr. Xi's latest attempt to turn back decades of decentralization by Chinese leaders that began under Deng and continued through other leaders like Jiang Zemin, a sign that China might be moving back to a so-called cult of personality. Now, I remember, I think it was Deng Xiaoping, was that his name? The one who came after Mao. There was that famous statement of his, that famous saying that was, and in this move towards decentralization to becoming a more market-based economy, that it didn't matter whether you hunted with a dog or a cat, so long, or it didn't matter if the cat was black or white. I can't remember what the saying was exactly. I don't know if anyone can remember. Leave a comment. Doesn't matter what color the cat is, something like that, so long as it catches a mouse. So it seemed that was an admittance of the failures of the previous regime, or at least that's what it seemed like. Whereas it seems like they're going in completely the opposite direction here, right? Seems like we're going back to the the good old days of a cult of personality is what they called it. A cult of personality, sort of a strongman leader kind of situation, right? But yeah. So the next thing, what else can we see here? Let's see. What other stories catch our eyes? Here's one. MPs criticised for drunkenness on Gibraltar army visit. So some politicians got drunk, apparently. So that's probably an interesting one to read. Let's have a look at that. I'm going to put that in the chat. See if anyone wants to have a look at it. There we go. So what's happened here? It says MPs criticised for drunkenness on Gibraltar army visit. Well, oh dear. 3 MPs have been accused of undermining respect for Parliament after they allegedly got drunk on a flight to visit UK troops in Gibraltar. So we've got some drunk politicians. That's the last thing we needed. That's the last thing we needed. Drunk politicians on a flight to Gibraltar. It says Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said the SNPs, that's the Scottish National Party, the Scottish National Party's Drew Hendry and David Linden and Labour's Charlotte Nichols had put their hosts in a difficult position. The SNP called the claims a Tory smear. Smear, that's an interesting term. For anyone who's looking at the article here, the word smear, S-M-E-A-R, is like a calumny, a lie, designed to besmirch, designed to damage somebody's reputation, right? So yeah, that's what everyone calls it. It's what politicians always call it. They always call it a smear campaign. Whenever they are accused of anything, they say, oh, it's just a smear campaign. None of it's true. But according to this, yeah, there were some drunk politicians on a plane headed to Gibraltar. The 3 were in a group of 15 MPs on the trip to Gibraltar, timed to coincide with Armistice Day. Armistice Day is today, isn't it? The 11th of November, the 11th hour of the 11th month, right? At 11 o'clock. So 2 hours ago. Missed that one. Yeah, we have a minute's silence on the 11th of November every year to remember Armistice Day, the day the First World War ended, I think. No? 1918, am I right? I think so. And anyway, these politicians were on a plane over to celebrate or set to coincide with Armistice Day. So that's today. So perhaps they've got a bit of a hangover, which is a shame. It was organised as part of the Armed Forces parliamentary scheme, which aims to give politicians an insight into military life so they can make a more informed and useful contribution to defence debates. Yeah. Yes, I mean, that's a broader discussion, isn't it? I mean, we often see politicians who are not experts in the field making big decisions that affect our lives, don't we? I mean, they feel it was necessary to take these members of parliament out to meet real military officers so that they got an idea of how the military works. And I guess we're talking about people who are involved in defense or something like that. Well, the idea was to give them greater insight, so greater understanding of the military, right? So a witness told the BBC that the 3 MPs in question had been drinking in the airport lounge. That's never a good idea if your flight gets delayed. A witness told the BBC that the 3 MPs in question had been drinking in the airport lounge before departure and had then drunk heavily on the flight, being inebriated on touchdown. And touchdown brought them round, I suppose. The BBC understands other MPs on the trip had also been drinking. The story was first reported to the Times and Sun newspapers. Mr. Henry and Mr. Linden, who are still in Gibraltar, are said to have become argumentative with officials when officials queried their COVID documents. Yeah, that's not a good look, is it? When they're making us all show our papers to everyone and then they're all drunk on a plane and someone asks to see their documents and they get all drunk and angry about it. So not a great look. Yeah. Miss Nichols has returned to the UK after what has been described as a mental health episode. Yeah, blaming it on mental health. That's often what actors do, isn't it? They get drunk, go out partying a bit too often, and then they say, I've got mental health problems. You know, it works for them. Then they go to the Betty Ford clinic and everything's fine. You know, they're forgiven. But there you go. An interesting one. Very interesting one. Okay. What else have we got? What other interesting things are going on today? Now, here's one that I'm kind of not sure about. Elon Musk, Tesla boss, has sold $5 billion of shares after a Twitter poll. I saw him on Twitter asking his followers whether he should sell or not, right? And it appears as though he has sold 5 billion shares in Tesla, which I'm not really sure. I don't understand really what the controversy is there. But there were people suggesting that this could have great ramifications for the stock market at large. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure of the details of that. But let's have a read through it. It says Tesla chief executive Elon Musk has sold around $5 billion, that's about 3.7 billion pounds, of shares in the electric car maker. It comes days after he asked his 63 million Twitter followers whether he should sell 10% of his stake in Tesla. So his stake is the percentage he has in the company, right? The company's shares fell by around 16% in the 2 days after the poll came out, right? So he's been known to do this in the past by saying controversial things on Twitter, usually, that affect the stock, the value of his stock prices, right? And a big one, I remember a few months ago, was he just came onto Twitter and said, you know, that I think that my shares are a little bit too high. The price of the shares are a little bit too high, and yeah, I don't think they should be so expensive. And of course, the company lost billions in a matter of hours. And so he seems to be playing with fire again here. I don't really understand why. Does anybody know why? Why is it a big problem if he sells his shares? I suppose it indicates a lack of certainty in the company, no? If one of the biggest stakeholders sells a big proportion of his shares, it shows that he doesn't have a lot of confidence in the company. And if it's a very big company, I suppose that can have a knock-on effect, ramifications for other companies, supply companies. I've got no idea. I suppose, I don't know if anyone knows any more than me about this, which could be literally anyone, then let me know. So the company's shares fell by around 16% in the 2 days after the poll came out in favor of him selling the shares before regaining some ground on Wednesday. Yeah, it's very volatile, seems to be going up and down, right? Tesla is the world's most valuable car maker with a stock market valuation of more than $1 trillion. So even though we're talking about billions here, you've got to bear in mind that the company itself is worth $1 trillion. Mr. Musk's trust holds around 3.6 million shares, right? So a share is a percentage in a company, right? Mr. Musk's trust, his company, his association holds around 3.6 million shares in Tesla, worth around $4 billion. So what's 4 billion? Well, a trillion is a million billion, right? And this is a mistake that people make when they're translating. I know, at least from Spanish into English, that a billion is equivalent to millones, right? So in Spanish they say 1,000 million, but we say a billion, right? And then a trillion is 1,000 billion. So that would be what we call a trillion. Bizarrely, in Spanish, they call billón, which is really odd, and something that even I've noticed newspapers get wrong when they translate. I've often seen, for example, there's a new situation in the USA with the COVID relief package. They're talking about a $3 trillion injection into the economy, plan to help businesses and to help people recuperate after the pandemic. And they're translating it as trillones, which would be like a quadrillion. So obviously people are looking at those numbers with no way of being able to conceptualize those numbers. You know, it's ridiculous, and the mistranslation really doesn't help. But yeah, anyway, what else? What else can we see here? Anything else interesting in the news going on? Yeah, I'm sure there is. Let's have a look at some entertainment news. That's always interesting. What's going on here? Oh yes. Now this one's one that kind of bothers me a little bit, because it's somebody who divides opinion. Meghan Markle, Prince Harry's wife. She's had to apologize to court. She's had to apologize to a court for basically lying, it seems. She lied to a court, and it's a really complicated story. So it says, I've just put that in the chat if anyone wants to have a look at the article. It says the Duchess of Sussex has apologized to a court for making a misleading statement. And misleading, if something is misleading, it's basically cheating, it's lying, right? And making a misleading statement, if it misleads you, it leads you to the incorrect conclusion, right? So is that lying? It kind of sounds like lying to me. A misleading statement in her privacy case against the Mail on Sunday publishers. Right. So this one's quite a complicated story. I'm trying to work it out myself. It says the appeal court heard she had asked an aide to brief the authors of a biography, despite having earlier said she did not contribute to the book. So there was a biography about Meghan Markle. She then took the company, I think the publishers, to court, right, complaining that they'd lied about her or that they hadn't consulted her. And then it turns out that that she had instructed an aide of hers, that means like a helper, somebody who works for her. She had instructed that person to give them information, right? So it's very strange that initially she gave the information, then wasn't happy with how they used it, said that they hadn't consulted her and that what they had said was a lie, I think. And then she's had to retract what she said again, right? She's had to say that, yes, in fact, what she had said is misleading. Now, in England, we call this perjury, I think, lying in court. So there could be big consequences for Meghan here. I don't know. I don't know which way this one's going to go. But it says, Meghan said she had forgotten the event and had not intended to mislead. So it was accidental, right? She didn't mean to mislead anyone. It was a complete accident. I get the feeling that she gave some information, then regretted it. This is what it feels like to me, no? She did not intend to mislead, is what she claims. It's what she says. Associated newspapers, so this is an association, I guess, for the defense of newspapers. Associated newspapers, it's like the Associated Press, I guess, is trying to overturn a ruling. A ruling is a decision made by a court. They're trying to overturn it. They're trying to reverse this decision, right? After it published a letter from the Duchess to her father. So she wrote a letter to her father, and there was a ruling saying that they couldn't publish this letter, right? I'm not sure which newspaper published it. So it says Meghan, 40, that's her age, won her privacy case against the publisher of the Mail on Sunday. So Associated Newspapers is the publisher of the Mail on Sunday. She won her case against them earlier this year, when the High Court found its publication of the letter was unlawful. So originally, the Mail on Sunday was found guilty of publishing documents that it didn't have the authority to publish, right? But Associated Newspapers' legal team, so this company's legal team, so their lawyers, are now seeking to overturn this judgment, to reverse this decision, right, at the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal is where you go when you want to appeal a decision. You want to, they've said you're guilty, you're not guilty, or whatever, and you've been accused of something, you've been found guilty of something, but you have a right to appeal the decision, right? So they're disputing that this was simply a private and personal letter, and have argued that it was crafted with the possibility of public consumption in mind. So they dispute that it was private, okay? That it was written with an idea that the public could eventually see it. So a complicated one, this. It says, a spokesman for the Sussexes has previously said the couple did not contribute to the Finding Freedom biography written by Omid Scobie and Carolyn Durant. But in new evidence heard on Wednesday, Jason Knauf, or Knauf, the couple's former communications secretary, said the book was discussed on a routine basis. So he's completely contradicting what they have said, right? And discussed directly with the Duchess multiple times in person and over email. So this person who worked with her, the communications secretary, is saying that, well, no, she didn't just forget. She just didn't like the consequences of revealing this information. I think that this information was discussed on multiple occasions, several times, in person and via email. So, yeah, I mean, this is quite a complicated story to unfold, really. I know what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head over to Twitter, see if we can find anything on there. So we're going to have a look at some stories that we can find on Twitter at the moment. We're going to go to trending topics and just see what we can see. So the first thing that comes out, Meghan again. We've got tendencies here trending in the UK. Meghan Markle apologizes for misleading the court over AIDS exchanges with biography authors. So that's a big story, clearly. Let's just go for it. Let's have a look at trending. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, we've got the latest football news. Steven Gerrard has been appointed head coach of Aston Villa after leaving Rangers. And here's an interesting one. Here's the one I saw yesterday. Johnson, the corrupt PM. Now, there was an interesting corruption story in the UK yesterday. Now, I've been living in Spain for 12 years. And the corruption here that you hear about is pretty scandalous. You hear some really big stories. You hear massive amounts of money being talked about. You know, millions and millions of euros being embezzled, no, being hidden or being stolen from public funds. I kind of like it when when they talk about corruption in England because there are always these smaller cases that's kind of very English. It's almost cute. But the one I heard about yesterday was that a famous politician in the Conservative Party in England, Ian Duncan Smith, had influenced public policy about hand sanitizer, I believe. So cleaning your hands with hydrochloric gel, while he's also working for a company. I think he receives about £25,000 a year, they said, from a company that produces this hydrochloric hand sanitizer. And so, you know, he's kind of helping his company out there saying, you know, you need to clean your hands. But that's about it, you know, in England. And they're talking about here, I think, something a bit more serious. They're talking about the PPE contracts. The PPE contracts is the protective equipment that nurses and doctors wear. So obviously people worried about which companies are involved in that. Do they have any connections to direct connections to government? Obviously that can be quite problematic, naturally. Cash for peerages. I'm just going to share this with you in the chat. Cash for peerages so that you can see this. How do I share it? I know how I share it. Yeah, I'll just share this in the chat, this tweet. And you can see cash for peerages. Now, peerages are basically positions like a lord in the House of Lords, right? And there's been suggestion for years that basically by giving money to a political party, you can get yourself into the House of Lords. You can become a member of the House of Lords, or you can get a political position, a position of power, by basically paying either the Labour Party or the Conservative Party. There's another suggestion about Russian money, cash for lobbying. So that would be obviously paying money in order to be able to have a conversation, usually with the Prime Minister or with policymakers, members of the cabinet, things like that. The pork barrel politics. I don't know what that's about. Does anybody know what pork barrel politics are? I don't know. The weakened scrutiny and the joke ministerial code overseen by the crook in chief. Well, yeah. So that's kind of like a blanket attack on Boris Johnson there. Boris Johnson says the UK is not a corrupt country, as we can see there in the headline. If anyone can see it, yeah, I don't think it is. I felt like when I came to live in Spain that corruption, or certainly money laundering, is a lot more commonplace here. Just basic things like in England, most people pay for everything with a card. Everybody's wages go through a bank transaction, but there's a lot of cash in hand in Spain. A lot of people walking around with wads of cash in their pockets, which is something I've got used to over the years after living here for so long. But I suppose thinking about it, that was never the norm when I was in England. I remember people using cards even when I was very young to buy anything. You know, you'd buy a packet of chewing gum and you'd pay with a credit card or a debit card. And yeah, especially if you have large amounts of cash, it's almost seen as suspicious. I saw a tweet by somebody else the other day that said that they tried to pay for a meal in a restaurant in London in cash, and the waiter looked at them as though they were a criminal, right? Because nobody walks around with like wads of cash. At least I don't remember people doing that when I was there. So does that mean that the UK is less corrupt than Spain? I don't know. I don't know, but I just know that it's very common. It's very common to pay for things here with cash. And I know that, for example, just this morning I walked into a cafe and asked if I could pay with a card, and they said no. It's just like no, which seems a bit bizarre to me that they won't even have the possibility of paying by card. You know, it's I don't know. It's a strange one. Does that mean that all of the money that they're carrying around in their pockets is laundered? I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but it certainly, I don't know, it certainly seems hmm, different. It's different at least. Let's see what else is trending then. Well, poppy. Now, poppies are an interesting one. Obviously, today is Armistice Day. It's Remembrance. What do we call it? Is this Remembrance Day? Is it the same thing? It's when we think about the people who died in wars, of course, and yeah. So today is what we call Remembrance Day, and everyone wears a little red flower on their shirt. You'll notice if you're watching English television, UK television, that usually the presenters are wearing a little red flower. I think if there's football this weekend, that the football teams will have a little red flower next to their badge and things like that. So that's something to look out for. And yeah, that's what we've got going on at the moment. And yeah, I don't know. What else? What else is going on in the world? I don't know. My Twitter feed's not very good today. Yeah, let's have a look. The ex-president of South Africa has died. F.W. de Klerk. Don't know that guy though. The only president of South Africa I remember was Mandela. And then this guy, who they have now, what's his name? Zuma? Is that his name? Yeah. But anyway. Anyway, I think that's most of the interesting stuff that's going on today. There's not much, is there? It's a bit of a dull day, bit of a slow day for news so far. We need something disastrous to happen, or something great. But I think that's enough for today, really. I don't know. I think we'll keep trying this. We'll keep trying these live streams, and I think the next one may be more English based, more learning based. But I'm still practicing and trying to get better at it. So I'll see you in the next one, I guess. Bye for now.